Yo, what's up, everybody? I got my fellow Mountaineer, JC Carter, on with WVU women's basketball. Pumped to have you on, man. See where the conversation goes. But before we get going, as always, we got to kick off with a wild or funny story. What you got?
I would say I'd probably have to think about going to my freshman year of high school. It's one of my first weeks on campus. I have an older brother. He was a senior in high school at the time. Was on the varsity football team. I was just kind of that young peon freshman. I remember the huge cafeteria, big high school, and I take my tray of food up and go to pay the cashier. And as I put it up, she reaches to get my money, hits my tray, falls, goes, echoes all through the whole cafeteria. It's super loud. The whole cafeteria starts chanting freshman, and I'm like, how am I supposed to establish
Uh,
myself here on campus? That was a pretty humbling, humiliating moment. Luckily, I had a big brother on campus that kind of helped me survive a little bit, but everything brings us back to humility, I think.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Where are you originally from?
That was in Indiana. Yeah,
Okay.
Seymour, Indiana. I'm originally from Missouri, but I moved there with my dad's job, and so yeah, trying to establish myself as a freshman in high school and dropping your tray and the whole cafeteria here is it was not the way to start. Wasn't the
How
move.
many, I'm curious because I know you did some, the reason I'll bring it back is how big was your high school then? And I asked because I know you did some time or coaching and living in Texas, and I lived a couple years in Dallas. Originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and I thought high schools were big in Alabama, and then I got to Texas, and I was like, these are mini colleges.
Right. Yeah, this one wasn't as big as the Texas high schools. There's probably 1,800 in the high school there, so
Yeah.
still decent size, but not the size of those, like you say, mini college campuses in Texas.
Every day, it literally like rings true. Even like the I didn't know how big like sports were in Texas too, in the sense of again, like coming from Alabama, especially the two that stood out to me the most was volleyball and soccer.
Mm.
When I got out there and just how popular and how massive they were coming from Alabama, where volleyball and soccer were kind of, and then I got out there and it was like, they're like, we signed contracts at 10 years old. And I was like, what's going on out here?
Yep.
um, so I got to ask, is originally from Indiana. So I actually wrestled at WVU. And so being from Alabama, when I got up there, it was a little culture shock. So I'm curious, coming from Missouri, spending time in Texas, how's the Morgantown life treating you?
Well, the best thing about Morgantown and West Virginia is West Virginia University and Mountaineers are this state's
Yeah.
lifeblood, if you will. And so it helped that we had a good year this year. And so the more you win, the more people buy your meals out when you're out in town. And so that definitely helps. And I love to eat, so that was a major blessing. But no, it's been great. I'm kind of a chameleon. I tell people I've lived everywhere from Los Angeles to Tallahassee, Florida, and everywhere in between. And so as we talked, you're going to see that it all comes down to relationships, and relationships are who we are and what makes up it, whether it be in our personal life or in our career life. And so the people here in Morgantown have been awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Touch on that because I obviously is I know we said before, kind of want to dive into some of the leadership and mentorship and developing athletes as people and as from a performance standpoint. And so for you in developing those relationships, what's kind of I guess the foundation of like how do you start to build those and lay that groundwork is because this is first year in Morgantown, second year?
It was, yep.
First year.
Our whole staff got here last spring.
So yeah, like really laying that foundation of coming in, especially people, I say people, the athletes there that were sophomores, juniors, seniors, or fifth years. It's new faces. And so how did you guys go about really I mean, it's trust, right? Like that's what you're trying to do is gain and build their trust. And so how do you go about that as a coach?
Yeah, well, I think just for one thing, just West Virginia in particular and our staff, and it starts from the top down. And Coach Kellogg he's really even keel. He doesn't jump too high, he doesn't fall too low. And I think our players caught on to that really quickly into our tenure here, and they
Yeah.
realize, we're not going to get onto you too tough, and we're also not going to get super excited when things get good. We got to be steady Eddie, and we don't have to get into this, but I don't know if as we got into the NCAA tournament and playing Iowa, we're down 12, we come back and tie. We're down 10, we come back and tie in front of 15,000 Iowa fans. But that started day one when Coach got here, and
Mm.
it wasn't just we had some good plays and players were hitting shots. It showed the resiliency of our players, it showed the resiliency of our program, and we have a standard here, and that standard it needs to be it's established every day and it's presented every day. And one thing I tell young coaches is every day that you go to the office, every day that you show up is your championship. It's your conference championship. It's your national championship. And the reason I say that is, why is it my national championship every day when I walk through those doors is because if I do that every day over and over, and I approach it with a standard, if I approach it with an accountability, if I approach it with an enthusiasm, when I finally get that national championship that I dreamed of coaching, I'm not going to be surprised by it
Yeah.
because I've created and I've controlled that chaos every day. I've brought purpose. I've brought passion to what I do. And it just goes back to the standard I think we've set here. And I think that's going to hopefully pay dividends for years to come.
Yeah. How have you guys, because I think, oh, I definitely want to get into this, is I think a lot of people, coaches, um, they toss around a lot of words without giving them any meaning, right? Like, we got to have good team culture. What does that mean? We got to have good leadership. What does that mean? And so for you is when I think of culture, I think a little bit of kind of like what you touched on. It's how you live and breathe daily versus I think that I had a coach on here. He said it wonderfully is, so I'm stealing this from him. He was like, I think a lot of people confuse. They think it's this like magical moment versus the daily actions, the daily life. And like, to your point, kind of those daily standards. Is that kind of how you guys view it and define it for your program and athletes and coaches?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm gonna use the word standard a lot because that's who we are, but also I always say excellence. You can't excel without being excellent at what you do, with paying attention to detail, with coming in with the right attitude, the right mindset, with going 100%. And by the way, I don't believe in 110%. I got to know Coach John Wooden when I used to live in Los Angeles, and he'd be like, "JC,
Oh,
there's no such thing as 110%. God only gave us 100% to work with every day. There's no extra 10% that we can divvy up, right?" And so with that, how you approach things, how do you do things with excellence, and then to that, an accountability. You can't have ability without accountability, right? And to me, accountability, when you don't have accountability, it's just talent that's wasted.
yeah.
And so once again, I think you just have to hold yourself to that. How am I coming today? Am I just dragging in, or am I coming in with excellence and with enthusiasm?
Yeah. What was that experience like? How long did you get to be around Coach Wooden?
3 years.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but by the time I end up leaving, I was blessed. He ended up being a reference on my resume, and it's just because I stalked him. He just,
The truth comes out.
right. There's actually a newspaper did a story on Coach and I don't have to get into it today, but I ended up getting this vacuum fixed for him. And so because I just wanted to meet this guy one more time, and so
Yeah.
I got his vacuum fixed, I got his vacuum fixed for him. And then when I went back and took it to him, I just sat there in his living room, and then we hit it off, and he just became a mentor. I was a head high school coach at the time, and if I had a bad practice, I'd call him up, be like, "Coach, it wasn't a good practice today." He'd be like, "Come on over, JC," and he'd kind of have to whip me into shape a little bit. So he was a blessing to me, obviously, and he would let me take a little tape recorder over every time I talked to him, and I'd set it out, and then when I would leave, I'd go back and type up the notes that we talked about, and just I think he saw just a dumb young coach that needed help and invested in me.
That's so cool. But I think that there's I talk with a lot of people on here about like helping young adults, athletes, people of asking the questions, taking the leap of faith, like if you will. And it sounds like you did that without fear, so to speak, of like, and it paid potentially massive quantum dividends of like, I did you even recognize at the time like the level of knowledge, like the I guess the appreciation for that for those opportunities, I guess, is better.
Yeah, every time I walked away or left his condo there in Encino, I felt stupid, but it's not because he made me feel stupid, it's because of the knowledge he exuded and the wisdom he exuded. And just so kind of to your point of topics and questions, I would always take one topic over there every time I go over
Mm.
scouting reports, whether it's practice preparation, whether it's player development, and I'd say, "Hey, coach, can I ask you about this?" And I one day I had a really 6'5", really good. I was coaching boys at the time. I had a really good athlete, one of the best players in the state of California at the time, and he had a bad practice and he was frustrating me. He's a sophomore. He's just a young pup. Now he's like one of my
Yeah.
best. But anyways, so I called coach. So he said, "Come on over." So I go over there and I say, "Coach," I said, "Man, he's just not getting it. I'm trying to help him do this." And coach looked at me right in the eyes and he goes, "JC, if he's not getting it, it's because you're not teaching him." And
Mm.
and he broke down to me. He said, "So many coaches overcoach, they don't overteach." And he said, "Be an overteacher of the game, don't be an overcoacher of the game." And he had to tell me kind of what that was. And so he says, if he's not getting it, it's because you're not teaching him. And to me, that changed my whole philosophy from trying to be a coach and draw up cool plays to teaching the game and teaching life.
Yeah. Can you go into that a little bit? That's fascinating. I'm actually like personally very fascinated about that is the contrast of coaching versus teaching and like how he defined it and how you've continued to like I'm sure it's grown and evolved over the years of coaching like for you personally too.
Yeah, for one thing, just off the floor, his big thing in his books is the first day of practice, he would teach his players how to tie their shoes. And
Mm.
everybody thought it's just because, well, they were coming from maybe a home where they didn't know how to tie shoes. Well, no, he did that because he wanted to show them how to pull their socks up tight enough so they tie their shoes so they didn't get blisters, so they didn't waste practice time. Because he didn't want to waste practice time. It wasn't, he was just trying to teach them the essentials of life. He didn't want to waste practice time. Right. And so for me, I think I saw it play out and hopefully still seeing it play out in my life is let's just take it from the basketball perspective, the basketball standpoint. Basketball is a reaction game. It's not an action game. Right. So how do
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
how do you teach your players how to react to situations? Because basketball doesn't have headsets like football. We can't
Right.
talk and tell them. And so how are we teaching them how to react to a situation? Not, and obviously we want them to have action. But
Right.
the
Right.
key
Right.
is how do they react to a scenario and we're out of timeouts? Well, we've already gone through in practice. We've already taught them. And his thing was in his practice planning, his practice plan was 75% individual and fundamental and 25% team. We don't do that these days. We're
Yeah.
we're 75% team, we're 25% individual, right? And I think if you can find a balance there of really, because at the end of the day, we want our players to be coaches on the floor. They may want to be attorneys, they maybe want to be businessmen and businesswomen off the floor, but we need them to be coaches on the floor. And so if we can really teach them in practice, then they'll be able to handle it in the game situation.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you to define leadership, but I'm sure that he had some influence in how you've defined that, lived it, coached it, taught it, and breed it into programs now.
Yeah, a lot was just his personal demeanor.
Yeah.
And it's the major compliment to my head coach here, but my coach Kellogg and Coach Wooden, I feel like have the same demeanor in that um, Coach Wooden would create the chaos in practice so the players could control the chaos in games.
Hmm.
Right? You don't see Coach Wooden up yelling like other coaches of our day and age. But his intensity was just the same. I mean, I
Yeah.
caught him a couple of times with his intensity and his passion. You could tell, like, okay, there's Coach disrespect, um, but you don't see that in the game because his players had already been through that chaotic situation in practice. He didn't have to be there and gas them up to make sure they were ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's been for you, one of the common questions like I'm always asking coaches is I think from a foundational level, did you always know coaching was the thing? Or was it just I know it sounds like you potentially started at the high school level and have kind of just like grown and evolved along the way. Was it something early on that like you just knew, or was it like, hey, we need this voice coach. Do you think you can give us a helping hand? And then it just kind of like really grew and evolved from there.
Right. I knew when I was 8 years old I wanted to be a coach. My dad had played college basketball at a small
Okay.
level. He had done some coaching on the lower levels, and he was the first one who actually ever told me about John Wooden's press, the 221 press. And so I
Okay.
kind of always cut my teeth on that. And then it just worked out. I was coaching in LA, and just like I say, it was amazing how it worked out for me to get to meet him and get to know him. And the funny thing was not just coach, but as I was 8 years old, I remember watching UCLA versus Louisville on TV. And I'm like, I mean, I guess I knew at that point it wasn't my DNA to play in the NBA, so I could kind of foresee the future. Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's not gonna be my route. So hopefully I can help some people be better players since I can't be or whatever. But I knew at a young age, and I knew that passion, and that was my driving force. Even as a passion through high school to want to play Division I basketball, which I was blessed to do, and then going through college, I played. I just remember just always trying to ask my coaches questions upon questions, knowing in the back of my mind kind of where I wanted to go.
And then how did the first opportunities kind of take shape, take form? And then did you kind of was college always the dream? Have you wanted to like venture into the professional level? You know, it sounds like you did some men's coaching as well as like women's coaching. So just how did that kind of like all it take shape?
Yeah, and the word relationship is going to put a bow on everything I talk about,
Yeah.
honestly. And so my first job actually was on the Division I men's level, all because of my brother-in-law who had played for the head coach. I was looking through this back when you go on the NCAA website and you look for jobs, you'd scroll, and I was graduating college. I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Am I going to be a GA? Am I going to do this? Whatever. And I remember bringing up this school's name, and my brother-in-law was like, "What? That's the guy I used to play for at a different school." And so then that worked out. I interviewed, and obviously the relationship with my brother-in-law, then the relationship with his previous coach kind of helped do that. So I started there my first year, and then after that first season, he gets hired by a Power Five to go be their top assistant. So then at that point, we're out without jobs. He gets me the connection. He knew somebody out in Los Angeles where I became that boys' high school coach. Where I ended up meeting coach because of that. I met Coach Wooden
Yeah.
while I'm coaching at that high school. A Division I men's head coach's son was on my team. I coached him 2 years. The head coach asked me to come be his assistant the third year I was out there. So I became his assistant, and then on down the line. But one thing I tell young coaches, especially, I literally have coached at every level. I've coached high school, I've coached NAI, I've coached men's Division I, obviously Power Five women at several different schools. I've coached every level, and the key is from here it's possible, and where's from
Yeah.
here? From you. It starts with you, and so don't get caught up in. We all get caught up in the comparison game.
Yeah.
Don't get caught up in the comparison game. You've got to have blind in this business, especially. You've got to have blinders on because you just don't know, and so you got to keep your head down and keep working and continue to build relationships. And um, going back to Coach Wood, obviously the two cornerstones on his pyramid of success are industriousness and enthusiasm. Industriousness is a work ethic, and enthusiasm is excitement. You've got to have a work ethic, and you've got to have an excitement about what you do every day, or you will not last. This business will eat you up.
Yeah.
You've got to have a passion, and I like to say that your passion isn't revealed on when everything's going great. Your passion is revealed when everything's going bad. And
Hmm.
you've got to know you have a passion for this career and for this business because you're gonna have a bad day. When we recruit student athletes here, we're gonna tell you it's like 80% of your decision comes down to the relationships here. You're going to have a bad day. Who do you surround yourself with on those bad days? It's not the fancy
Mm.
facilities. It's not how many people are in the seats. It's not, can we get you here, get you there, the best NIL deals, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It comes down to your passion, your enthusiasm, and your work ethic.
How have you been able to kind of keep your blinders on and just stay successful? Because, like you said, I mean, you have to have had success of like doing what you're doing. Otherwise, like you said, that industry will eat you up, spit you out. Like you can be in 1 year and out, never back in another year.
That's right.
So how have you kind of like again, I don't know another way to put it, but like you said, has been able to keep your blinders on for so many years.
I'd like to say a lot of it goes back to my faith. You've got to be centered. You've got to have an anchor in something,
Yeah.
and so my faith and who God is in my life, and knowing that He's going to be faithful, and the times that I have so many shortcomings and so many failures, he's going to take care of me. I have an unbelievable family, an unbelievable support system, who encourage me, who support me on the good days and support me on the tough days. Has there been adversity? Yeah. But I have a lot of sayings just because I'm not very smart. So I have steps to keep things simple minded.
Yeah,
But,
I'm with you.
adversity adds to your story. And there's got to be some adversity along the way to really add to that story. And I've been blessed to work for some amazing coaches, obviously to coach some phenomenal athletes. And so with that, you've got to, at the end of the day, you got to surround yourself with great people.
Yeah,
We are the sum of that.
I totally believe that. Which one do you like? You're on the spot on this one, I guess, a little bit. Which, because it's such different hats. You like being head coach, or you like being like assistant, like because it's just two different perspectives. And so I'm curious of like, and I'm sure they both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, there's definitely been some ebb and flow to that. I think just like anything, you feel like you learn, and then now you want to kind of prove it to yourself and prove to others that you can do it. Um, right now, I'm in a really good phase. At the end of the day, my heart's desire, my boss knows my heart's desire is to be a head coach at the right time, the right place. I'm not just going
Yeah.
to take anything. I think we have a really special thing going here in West Virginia. We're coming off winning 25 games, playing the second round of the NCAA tournament. We returned 4 starters. We've got a great locker room, a great culture here that's in place. And so selfishly, I kind of just want to enjoy the ride a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah.
if I can add to it here and there, I'm going to add to it, but we've got a great staff and a great team. And so, but I always have a coaching philosophy notebook that I kind of keep, and I'm always making notes in. And so hopefully, when the right time comes, I want to be ready for that, because you don't give very many opportunities. And so
Yeah.
you don't want to force the hand if you're not quite ready. And you're, as they always say, you're never ready to be a head coach, but I want to be as prepared as possible for that when that opportunity arises.
Yeah. I'm always curious too, because I am surrounded by a lot of coaches, and like I get the opportunity to work with several teams across the country and asking them that similar question of like their journey. And it's funny, it's like sometimes I feel like it's split down the middle is as people get into the industry of college coaching. I'm going to be a head coach one day and spend a year or two. They're like, no, I'm good being a number two.
Exactly. Whole lot less pressure, that's for sure.
Yeah. It always
John
makes
John Maxwell says it best. He says a leader never has 2 good days back to back.
yeah.
A leader never has two good days back to back, and that's true. There's gonna be bad days. You're just dealing with imperfect people, and
Yep.
if it's okay to wake up in the morning and go, okay, what's the big problem? It's gonna hit me right in the face. Saddle up, let's go. Then they're
Yeah.
leaders.
It makes me and I always resort again, movies, right? It's like Remember the Titans when they're on the stairs and he's telling them what to do, and he's like, "I've never seen an assistant coach's name for losing in the paper," and I was like, "Facts."
That's so true.
um, Going back to like faith a little bit too, has that always been a thing in your life, or is that something that just kind of evolved and like you really stepped into and just was I think of it as like a timing thing because I feel like everybody kind of has like their own like faithful journey. It's just like sometimes we grow up like we went to church because we had to until like we really kind of did our own discovery of like what we believe and why we believe it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's always, I was raised in a Christian home, and actually I was raised in a pastor's home. And so, when we were always at church, yeah, we were. But I appreciate my parents for not just shoving down our throats,
Yeah.
for us kind of finding who we are and why we believe what we believe in, and not just because they said so. And I think there's a whole lot healthier approach to that, knowing what we believe and why we believe it. And obviously, they were teaching us the principles and the guidelines all the way, but it wasn't because they believed it that we had to. And obviously, there's days that you question it, but then I think that's when God shows how faithful He is.
Yeah. So in conversations, this is like one of the most like kind of like fascinating avenues I enjoy talking about with this is when you talk with anyone, but I think it's a lot of times potentially like young adults, especially in the world that you're in, 17, 18 to 22, 23, 24, um, helping them either understand like why they believe what they believe. Because I feel like a lot of times, especially like in having conversations with people like about faith, is sometimes is like, why I believe this, and it's like why, and the like there's kind of no substance behind it. It's just kind of like, I don't know, because it's always been a part of my life. And so I just kind of like, kind of just go with the motions because it's been a part of your life for 18 years or 20 years or whatever it is. Um, but obviously, I'm sure, and you just seem like very knowledgeable. Anybody that can say it's like, I didn't do this because it was forced down my throat is like, I took kind of a deep dive, I guess, a little bit of understanding why it is that I believe what I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've got to realize that there are certain situations we can't control,
Mm.
right? I mean, I can't control when the light turns green. I'm type A and I want it to be green all day, right? I'm wanting to beat that person in the second line at Chick-fil-A. I'm trying to beat them first. Otherwise, they end up beating me. So
Yes.
there's just, and it could be a health situation, it could be a job, whatever it is. And so at the end of the day, I know I'm in control of very, very little. I tie my shoes
Yeah.
beginning of the day. That's about the only thing I'm really in control of. And so I have to know that there's something greater than I am. And that's where I like the word in the acrostics of faith, forsaking all, I trust him. I mean, it comes down to faith. You have to believe that he says who he is. And I've got to believe that. And if I die and I'm wrong, I would rather die being wrong in that than dying and not believing and trusting that. And I think I'd rather err on that side. And so to answer your question, I don't know if that exactly is exactly what you're asking, but to me, I think it comes down to just taking that step of faith and really believing that, I'm not in control of everything and I need to believe and that trust that God truly is.
Yeah. And I like that. I think you used the word uh like principles too, because I think that that's something like, again, going back to like defining words when people can understand like what words mean. Like there are certain principles in faith, just like there are certain principles in sports, athletics, there are certain principles in school, and principles don't change, right? Like those are the
Right.
foundations, right?
Right.
Like to be successful in school, principles like you probably got to go to class, you probably got to study and take some notes, right? Like there's just foundational things like if you want to be successful. And so I think that, helping people understand what those principles are like in faith of like if it is just belief or if it is taking the word for what he says it is, like whatever those, I guess let me ask you, like what are some of those principles like for you?
In regard to just like daily life or
We'll go different categories. Yeah, we can go faith, and we can go even just daily life, or coaching, or mentorship, and student athlete development.
yeah, I mean, once again, we've already talked about standard. We have standards here. We have you got to show up. You can't be late. Like being late is a standard. Like that's not an option. Coming in right as coach is about to talk to the team about the film. As long as it wasn't at 3:01, it was at 3. Okay, we'll deal with it. But 3:01, we got an issue.
Yeah,
The first time, maybe we'll give you some grace, but that second time, you're gonna get to talk to our strength coach and however whatever he needs to do. So that's a standard. Showing up on time. A standard is an attitude, like being coachable and being willing to do what we ask. That's a standard. Once again, accountability is holding yourself accountable starts with that. Don't try to hold your teammates accountable if you're not bringing the same
yeah,
thing every day. And so I think it just comes out as standard accountability. I've already talked about excellence and things like that. Personally, integrity. What is
yeah,
integrity? It's what you do when no one's looking, and what drives that. Do I do it because it's probably just because I should, or do I do it because there's deep conviction that I know right from wrong? Uh,
hmm yeah. You mentioned before we started recording, you got two boys. How's that? I'm a, I guess I'm a newer parent, right? I have recently have a 2-year old, so I'm curious of like
congrats.
how appreciate it. I'm learning. Um, um, how that's just helped shape you and mold you as person and coach, and raising two boys and things like that.
So one's 14 and one's 11. You're going to turn 12. So they're in a very, very, very impressionable stage as boys growing into young men, and they're in all the sports and things like that. And they have different style of coaches, and of course, they're going to talk to me about their coaches, and you know, and my youngest one is uber competitive. Not sure where he gets that, but he is super,
Yeah,
super competitive. So trying to talk to him about how to channel. I love your passion, buddy. I love that you absolutely hate to lose. And you know, and I've had to. It's taken me a long time to kind of learn and navigate through that. My oldest one is super, super driven. He's very focused. He doesn't need to be motivated. He's going to be in the driveway getting his shots up or throwing the baseball, whatever it is. And so, but at the end of the day, it comes down to them. I notice how they watch my actions and my reactions. It's not,
mm,
it's a whole lot, it's a whole lot less about words. And it's a whole lot more about actions for them.
yeah,
You know, and when they're not at games and they're watching, you know, if we have a game on TV or whatever, they're seeing how dad acts and how dad reacts. They both don't like over dramatic coaches. They just want it right to the fact. And so I know if
yeah.
I just kind of shoot them straight and keep it as emotionless as possible, they react and respond to that a whole lot better. And so it's funny just to kind of see, you know, whether I put my seatbelt on or not. You know, I don't have to tell them put their seatbelt on. They're like, Dad, you don't have yours on yet. I say, well, I get it. You know, so it's actions and not words. That is for sure, especially with those two.
It's funny you say that. Like literally last night, I was telling my wife is so when she was adopted, and when she was adopted, she was given this blanket, and so she still sleeps with this blanket like to the day. But most times she like puts it over her eyes, right? It is shredded to say the least. So, anyways, our 2-year-old has seen mom sleep with the blanket over her face, so now she thinks she's supposed to go underneath the covers, and I'm like, it's amazing, right? Of
Wow.
just like you don't even tell them these things, and they just pick up seat belts, and apparently we're sleeping under the covers now.
Why we do what we do, sometimes we don't know.
Yeah, right, right. So is basketball like is that I know you said they're kind of playing a little bit of everything now. Is that like a bigger passion, a bigger love for them just being around it obviously with you?
Yeah, I think so. You know, but I've tried, I played football and basketball. I wasn't very good at baseball. They're both pretty good at baseball. I'm not great at, I wasn't great at, but I played quarterback and then obviously basketball. And so football and basketball, my passion. I've tried to, and so far I think I'm about an A minus. I think I've done pretty good of not trying to influence too much. And just kind of letting them evolve to what they feel confident in, because at the end of the day, I want them to be confident young men. And
Yep.
I want them to really, if it's, you know, they both love school. They've both been in the spelling bee championships and stuff like that. And so whatever it is,
Love it.
I want to see them be successful. And so if it's baseball and not basketball, if it's football and not basketball, if it's basketball, and I also don't care. But what I do want them to know is your approach is key and how you approach it. My oldest is this summer will be going into his freshman year, and I'm like, you're not missing a summer workout. You know, you're not gonna miss a
Yeah.
weight. You know, because if you tell that coach you're gonna be there, you better be there. And you need to be somebody he can count on. And so we're kind of learning that lesson. Well, no, I can do this. So I'm like, nope, we've committed to it. You know, and so once again, it comes down to excellence, and Carter's do things with excellence.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Do they because they're like the age too is like getting to be around like the level of athletes that you're fortunate to be around. Are they starting to like again product of your environment, right? Hang around those people. Are they kind of like putting the puzzle together of like, hey, this is really unique to be, even if it's one day a week or once a month or like whatever it is. Um, to soak up kind of like what you did with Coach Wooden, right? Like the
Right.
ability to soak up some of that excellence, that knowledge, that opportunity around the people that you get to be around.
Yeah, you know, especially obviously they're in school, but especially in the summers where they're in my office and we're up on the second level, they'll see certain players, certain of our young ladies who are in the gym at the same time every day. And
Yeah.
they're starting to recognize, okay, that's why she is elite, because she's made a commitment. You know, she's disciplined, she's dedicated to that, and you know what you put into it's what you get out of it.
Yeah.
And I think they're starting to see that, and so it kind of, and then all of a sudden they'll trickle down there, and then they'll go shoot with them and stuff like that. But it's like they gotta see if you want to take money out of the bank, you better put investment into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think is who like I was having a conversation. There's almost like too much information out there. It becomes so watered down versus, again, kind of going back to like principles and like basics and fundamentals is, to your point, of what you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And I think a lot of people are like, okay, you need to put in, I'm making this number up. You need to put in 100 hours a week. And they're like, there's got to be a way to do like 60, right? Like, and they spend more time trying to find the way to do 60 versus just doing the 100 hours or whatever it is. And so it's just so much mismessaging out there.
Well, I think we're a check the box society, which is sad. You're not
Yeah,
you're
that's,
not you're,
yeah,
you're not able to bust out of the box if you're just checking a box, right? And so
I
I
like
don't
that.
I don't and I always tell people in recruiting, like, what type of players you recruit. So the first thing I recruit is somebody, not that loves to win. I want somebody who hates to lose, because the one who hates to lose is going to be the first one in the gym the next morning, or when the bus gets back to the gym, they're getting there like, okay, I was 1 for 12 tonight. How do I make that, 8 for 12 tomorrow night, whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's I don't want check the box type of people around me, whether it be a staff, whether it be student athletes. I want players who have the mentality of, and there's no such thing as a passionless self starter.
Mm,
Right? You can't be a self starter if you're passionless.
yeah.
You've got to have excitement. You've got to have a passion about what you do. And if I'm always having to tell somebody what to do, if I'm always having to tell somebody you need to get in the gym, get more, they're not going to get there, right? And
Yeah.
so we want players. I want to coach players who have a standard almost higher than I have for themselves.
Well, I was literally going to ask the question, make the comment of like, you've talked a lot about standards, and it's the ones that know that standards can be exceeded, right? Like those are the ones that you want to be around. Like if the standard is to be there at 3 o'clock, so to speak, it's like you want the people to know that, like, okay, 2:45 is my standard or whatever it is. If I need to put up 100 shots because that's the standard there, it's like, well, for me, it's 200, like whatever it is. It's like knowing that standards can be exceeded.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think that's, yeah.
right. Well, that's one thing they said about Nick Saban. Nick Saban wanted assistants who all want to be head coaches, right? So every day they're going to own that day. They're going to own that area. Now, the special teams coach maybe wants to have more of an input in offense. Well, that's not his area, but he's going to be really good at owning the special teams aspect of that team, because
Hmm.
he wants that to be, he's making that an umbrella of his whole program. And so, you want people who have, like I say, who have standards higher than almost you have for themselves.
Yeah. It make honestly, it's funny tying this into, so I had Darius Nichols, who played basketball there. He's coach at Radford now, and he was telling a story about like Coach Huggins of like, certain standards of things that, like, I forget the exact story of like number of shots after a practice or something along those lines. And he was like, there's a couple guys basically like goofing off, and he was like, Coach Huggins would sit there not say anything, and then he was like, they would go into the next game, and guys wouldn't start playing well. And so he's like, he would just like wait. And then like as the time, guys would be all frustrated. And he's like, essentially just like, well, if you did what you were supposed to do after practice, then we wouldn't be having this problem. Right. And so it's like, I'm not going to yell and scream at you per se there. It's just like, it's this teaching moment of like, do you remember that you didn't do what you were supposed to do?
Right. That's so
I
true.
think super, super, super fascinating. Um, what's biggest difference, because I've always asked people of like the difference between like head coach and assistant coach and what those hats look like is what about from like the age range when you were like coaching high school to coaching young adults now versus, as you put before, there were some young pups.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all about buy-in, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what level it is. And so I think, great leaders really know what the buy-in needs to be. And let's take high school at the lower levels, coaching high school, the buy-in has got to be the fundamentals, the skill development.
Mm,
And
mm,
and we all, every one of us in this world are motivated by something. What are we motivated by? What motivates me is different what motivates you. What motivates my players? Well, we're also all stat driven, right? And
yeah.
so to help with the younger level to help those kids figure out how to be good at stuff. How can I help, in a sense, their stats, their numbers become higher? And they've got to be able to see it to believe it, right? And
Yeah.
so the skill, it's the ball handling, it's the shooting. How can I help them see the ball go in the basket more? Um, at this level, it's about execution, right? And so
Mm,
our players, and obviously we work with them. We want their skill to continue to get better. You know,
totally.
they still have 4 years to improve because not a lot of college kids, or I don't say a lot, but some haven't been taught great through the high school systems. There's some coaches out there who could use a little help, and so
Put
so
politely.
thank you. And but at this level, it's about execution and how can they
Yeah.
have buy-in to execute. And the problem is, majority of the time, the execution isn't for them, right? The execution is going to be for their teammate. But how do we
Yeah.
motivate? How do we motivate them to where full circle comes back to where it helps them, makes them look good? And I mean, they say the average college basketball player has the ball in their hand about 45 to 50 seconds a game. Out of 40
Oh,
minutes,
damn.
they have the ball in their hands 45 to 50 seconds a game. That's not that much, which means
Damn.
I'm doing a whole lot more without that ball in my hand. So
Yeah.
how do I stay in a stance longer to help my teammate on defense? How do I set a better screen to help my teammates score? Once again, it comes into that buy-in of the execution.
Yeah. What about like I'm big on like the teams that I work with from like the emotional side of things. What do you feel like is, I don't know, maybe like the best way to put it, like their biggest hurdle as they come in from high school to college? What are some of like you guys as like coaches really work with them on? Obviously, again, you have the talent, the skills, all the physical things, but some more of like the mental and emotional side of things. What do you feel like some of the maybe common hurdles to start teaching them on?
Yeah, I think for one thing is just the duration of the season from a high school to college
Uh,
standpoint is so much.
yeah,
We get our players will be here June 1st, and obviously the NCAA kind of still limits your hours in the summer, but it amps up. But still, I mean they're doing summer ball and then they're going to the pool and then they're whatever. And well, here they got weights and then they got skill and then we have practice and things like that. And then that goes pretty much. And they'll get a break. Obviously, they'll get to go home in August for a little bit. When they come back in the spring or when they come back in the fall to get ready for season, it's pretty much practice is on pretty quick once we get back on.
yeah,
So so just once again, the longevity of the season, and I like to say it as you're dealt. It's like a cup of water. There's only so much water in there, right? And so through the course of the season, there's only so much you can splash out. Maybe it's bad plays, maybe it's an exciting win of emotion, right? That cup
mm,
only has so much amount of emotion you can take out of it. And so that's why I think where Coach Kellogg does such a great job of not dipping into that cup of emotion too much because we need them to be really good, hopefully into March, 1st of April, right?
yeah.
That's when the elite of the elite are playing. And if we've taken that cup of emotion too much out of their tank too early, they're just not gonna have anything left. And where high school, it's just so much of a condensed season, they can kind of ebb and flow pretty high, pretty low. Can't do that here. So
Yeah.
we have to do a good job of our sports psychologists, us the staff, really helping them know how to balance and channel that.
Yeah. What about and this may or may not be an issue. I'm just spitballing here too, is in general, I think of like that generation, that age group is probably the best way to put it, struggles a lot with confidence, belief in themselves, ultimately like knowing how great that they actually are. It's like I feel like you've been in the game long enough, you've probably been around a number of players where you're just like, if you saw what I saw, like, oh my goodness, kind of type mentality. And so, how much of that do you guys have to help them uncover and unsee that, hey, like this is why you're here, like because you are this good. Um, yeah, curious.
We don't accomplish great things because we believe we can, because we believe in, at this level, we want the national championship.
Right.
We don't accomplish that because we believe we can, we want to, we have the ability to. It comes down to our self value, our self worth, right?
Yeah.
And that's where every day we have got to be able to allow them to know how much their worth brings to this team, how much they mean to us, and what they do well. And there's going to be some days they're not doing it very well, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so as a leader and influence in their life, we've got to find a way to, hey, hold your follow through a little bit longer, and all of a sudden then they start seeing that net start swishing. Now they start getting that self value, that self worth back. Or you know what? If you stay in a stance just a little bit longer, you're going to be able to guard them. They're faster than you, but if you stay in a stance, I promise you're going to be able to guard them, and then you're going to be able to get on the floor, and then you're going to get a play in front of the crowd, and things like that. And so it's not. I think we get caught up in the belief of something. Man, I think we really believe we can do it. I mean, I believe I can run a marathon. It ain't happening, right? Now, if I run every day and get after it and find my set value and okay, I ran 5 miles a day, I ran 10 miles
Yeah.
a day, build it up, now I can. And so as coaches, I think we have to it's every day. And Coach Kellogg does such a great job of this too. After every practice, he always has two names that he pulls those kids aside and talks to them just one on one. It can be about anything. It could have been about
Damn, that's good. I like that.
it could have been about, hey, great job getting all your study hall hours this week. We're really proud of you because last week you did, so good job. Or you had a really good practice today. Or why were you late to weights? But he does a great job investing at least two every day. They have that one-on-one. They're not just because what can happen is your 13, 14 player, they're gonna come in and out of practice every day, and they're getting few reps. They're not making very many shots. They don't get to guard the best player. And so they're just leaving. All of a sudden they're getting depleted, as opposed to if you find the time to really get eye to eye contact with them, let them know, hey, you know what? You're doing this really well. You're bringing this to the team. You have great value here. It's going to motivate them when we're all out of the office and the lights are off. They're going to come back and turn the lights on by themselves, and they're going to want to continue to get better.
It's amazing. I feel like we as human beings, like everybody has the need of being seen and feeling or being seen and feeling heard, right? And so it's like whether you're the top tier number one person on the team down to 13, 14, 15, when you're seen and heard, like that is such a driving factor, right? Like it's just the nudge, right? To do the extra little things. One of the fascinating, man, like, so, because you said value and worthiness is so fascinating. The first mentor, still kind of a mentor now for 6 years that I ever had, it was, so as we peel back the layer of the onion, is she made the comment, she was like, Ryan, like 99% of like the root of everything is the need to feel valuable and worthy. And she was like, when you feel that, like everything else will like take care of itself. So to your point, it's like that's why I'm so like fist pumping, because I firmly believe that, because I think a lot of people hope and wish and want for a lot of things, believe for things to happen to them in their lives, but they can't look in the mirror and see like how valuable they actually are.
We all have three basic needs: survival, food, shelter, clothing. We also have a need of security, being safe. But then the third S to that is significance. We
Mm-hmm.
all want to be appreciated for what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can find a way to find your significance on that team, like you say, to be seen and be heard, what is that? Is it I know I'm going to be the hardest worker every day? Is it know that I'm the best shooter on the team? Is it I know that I'm the best encourager? Once you find that self-worth, and I think it's us to help people, but as coaches we can't go around and make sure everybody every day knows
Right.
that. You've got to have that anchor to know who you are, but that significance, like you're saying, is it's so crucial in the makeup of a team.
Yeah. And especially it's like, and again, with like what you guys are trying to accomplish is like you never know when, I mean, the 13th person might be needed. Like you just don't know. And to know that like they go out there and know that they're worthy enough to be on that court and play with X, Y, and Z pays massive dividends versus if they're like, I don't belong here.
Right. Right. Well, and that's why the movie Hoosiers was so good because Ollie came in and hit those free throws, and they carried him off the floor, but his main job was just down there to chew the gum and be the quote unquote manager.
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, cool. I guess two more questions, and
Okay.
one we kind of touched on like a little bit before, but I guess like what's next? Like what's next for you? What's kind of next stream, next vision, next step? The next I call it the thing that pulls you out of bed. Like you said, you have the bad days. What's that next? If like even after a bad day, this is what pulls me out of bed and I'm ready to rock and roll.
I've always had the goal of coaching the Final Four and hopefully a national championship. For me, this is the best place to do it.
I love it.
And like we talked about, I eventually want to be a head coach, but I think the landscape of college athletics is changing so much, and so
Yeah.
the next 2 to 4 to 5 years, we don't know how it's going to look, and so what's going to separate low, mid major from Power Five and all that other stuff. But I know right now we've got a really good team here. We've got a really, really elite culture. I tell people this was my 20th season of coaching this year. And this really was my first year I walked into practice as a head coach, assistant, whatever, and I enjoyed every day of practice. And we had a couple bad losses. I mean, we were 25-7, 25-8. So we had some bad losses, but I enjoyed every one of our players going to practice every day and just knowing, hey, let's find a way to get better. Last night was not fun. We didn't bring it. They locked us in the locker room somehow, some way, and we decided not to get out of it. But I enjoyed it, and so I just really enjoy learning from coach every day, learning from other assistants on the staff, but also being around a team. And so at the end of the day, though, I want to coach in a Final Four. Right now we're kind of preseason top 15. I think we could definitely move up from there, hopefully, if we keep working. So that's my goal, is wanting to coach in that. And then if an opportunity presents itself to be a head coach, whether it's 1 year or 5 years,
Yeah.
I think I can be a little. I want to be a little picky on that.
Yeah. Why do you feel like that was it was so enjoyable this year? Is I guess I'm just kind of fascinated by that too, of like especially year one, it being that enjoyable so quickly, and like how, because some people, it's like the whole coaching staff is new, and so a lot of people would argue of like what's going to take time, right? It's going to take us 2 to 3 years to build this foundation and have this level of enjoyment. Why do you feel like that was so quickly for you guys?
A lot of it was the six returners that were coming back. The character of who they were.
Yeah.
But then the thing that was so amazing to me was then the seven we brought in, how they just meshed. I mean, literally from day one. I haven't seen anything
Yeah.
like it. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's was a blueprint to it, other than once again just kind of how coach established the culture and how we do things and the standard, and how we approach it. And not jump, once again, not jumping too high and not falling too low. And I think our players just bought into that. But it comes down to the parents they have and how they're raised, and it just makes our jobs a whole lot easier. And so to me, it really was a blueprint for the first year of a program. And it's not like we're sitting here taking all the credit as a staff, because a lot of it was who we inherited,
Right.
and just the ingredients we mixed together with that. And so I think that's what made it enjoyable, was just from day one. And I'm not somebody that very rarely will I'll be a part of something that exceeds expectations, because I'm somebody that's just like, I set the standards pretty high. I want to
Yeah.
reach,
Yeah.
and so, but this year we definitely did.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's not a discredit to our players or whatever. It's just we don't want to put that false in year one of there's so much terminology and philosophy and chemistry, but they exceeded and beyond exceeded it.
I guess one thing I never asked either is, did you and coach did you have prior relationship? Is that how he lured you away from stealing you out of Texas?
I never worked with him, but I had known him for the last probably 4 or 5 years, and we just kind of built a friendship on the road recruiting, and just kind of talked through years on the phone, and just said, and we had some of the same common friendships, and so it
Yeah.
was so I'd always respected him. I mean, he'd won everywhere he'd been, and so I respected his body of work at every level, and so but we just kind of had that common denominator, being on the road recruiting and talking, and then when a job presented itself, it happened pretty fast. And I felt like I had to take it.
Yeah. It's just one of those. Again, as another coach, he just said, he's like, I just love talking shop. Just love talking
Yeah,
shop. All right, last question. So if you were in a stadium with 100,000 people and you could only leave them with one message, what would your message be?
um, I think it comes down to enthusiasm. You have to be excited about what you do and be enthusiastic, because not only does that help you, but it's contagious to others.
Yeah,
Uh, you're gonna have tough days. It's inevitable, right? You're gonna have tough days, and if you have that enthusiasm, that excitement, and I'm not saying it's gonna deplete at times, but
right.
if you have that root of enthusiasm, excitement for what you do, I think it can conquer a lot of adversity, and but also I think create a lot of exciting times. And really at the end of the day, that's what drives your vision, your purpose, is your excitement, your enthusiasm for something. And so I would say probably be excited about what you do. And once again, every day is that national championship when you wake up. And so be excited about it, because it may not, there's going to be some chaos to it, but you'll get through it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like again to your point too of like at some level expecting the chaos, right? Like
Right.
it's not reality to even that's like even when a lot of student athletes say that how stressed they are or how much anxiety they have. I'm like, well, the job is not to never be stressed. Like that's not even reality. It's how do we manage it and how do we control it and how do we limit it so that you can achieve the things that you want to achieve. Um, Again, mismessaging out there a lot of times is like I think that they think that they're supposed to be, I say they, just young adults of happy 100% of the time. Like peaceful 100% of the time. I'm like, that's just not the way it works.
So there's a thing called curveballs.
Yeah. Wait till you have a 2-year old. Right.
Right. Exactly right.
I love it. I love it. Coach, I appreciate you. This was fun. Like I said, is I just enjoy, I think a lot of it is stories. I feel like stories are what move people. And so I feel like the more stories we get out there, is the more that people just relate to different people, different personalities, different perspectives. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciate the time, and it was a privilege to be on here, and you're doing great things. So keep it up.
I appreciate it. Until next time, everybody. Peace.